Today on Technado, we actually have two interviews. We'll be talking with Brian from SyncDog. We'll also be talking with Aviv from Votiro, all the way from Israel. We've also got a lot of news to talk about, including some hackers winning a Tesla and some bad news for Facebook. That is all coming up on the Technado, starting right now. Hello and welcome to Technado. I'm your host, Peter Van Rysdam, and I am joined by not Don this week as normal because Don is on a field trip, or as I should clarify, Don's child's on a field trip and he is chaperoning. I don't know if Don still does field trip.
Lucky Don.
Yeah, I know, but we are, lucky us, because today we are joined by none other than Mike Roderick over there in Don's seat and Cherokee Booth. How you guys doing?
Great, how are you?
Doing fantastic.
I'm good, thank you. We have a lot of news today, but we also have a couple really cool interviews. We've got two we're going to do today. We've got Brian, who's the Chief Revenue Officer at SyncDog, which is kind of a cool phone thing, so you don't have to carry around two phones. You can actually do your secure stuff on the one phone, so that's going to be cool to check out.
Mobile workspace solution, I think, is how they...
Containerized mobile workspace solution,
yeah.
CMWS.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't stand for anything. All right,
It's a lot cooler than it sounds.
And then we've got all the way from Israel, Don and Adam the other day spoke with Aviv, who is the CEO at Votiro. It's an award-winning cybersecurity company specializing in neutralizing files containing zero-day attacks. So that's going to be exciting as well. It always seems like all the cool security firms are over in Israel. So, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, we've got the news to talk about, so let's jump right in. And speaking of security, this one over on The Verge, security researcher pleads guilty to hacking into Microsoft and Nintendo. The researchers, they're supposed to be the good guys, but...
not so much in this case.
No.
I think he used to be a security researcher for Malware. Was it Malwarebytes?
I believe so. No, who was it that he was with? It was, let me see if I can find it real quick.
Okay.
And of course, I won't be able to find that, but yes, he was a security guy and then went to the dark side, evidently.
Well, I guess if you're on the light side the whole time, you see maybe how easy it is, or you think that you can outsmart these guys.
Yeah, probably.
And so, but of all the companies to hack into, what did he find over at Nintendo? Was he getting the latest games like Matthew Broderick and War Games?
Yeah, you got to get the cheat codes, right? Up, down, left, right, left, right. Yeah, I mean, you got to know what those are.
It's always the same.
Well, even in Microsoft, it seemed like more about like new pre-release type operating systems and so forth. So it didn't seem extremely malicious in my opinion, but you never really know what they're going to be doing with that information.
Some kind of backdoor to remotely access the Microsoft network freely for at least 3 weeks. Uploaded multiple shells, allowed him to search through Microsoft network, uploaded files and download data. 43,000 files.
Yeah.
So.
And it says 7,500 searches for unreleased products, code names, and build numbers. So, yeah, it looks like he just wanted to be that cool guy who's able to say, I think it's going to be this, and look like a genius.
But then the real interesting thing I thought was he was already in trouble for the one, was out temporarily, and hacked somebody else.
While on bail.
It's like that Fire Festival guy. These people never learn.
Can't get enough.
Oh, okay, yeah. And then that was not his first time ever being in trouble either. I think in 2015 he was... I don't think the company had pursued it, but he was in a situation with VTech, the toy maker company, which is a bit more unnerving because it had to deal with children's personally identifiable information, including addresses. Yeah. And VTech did not pursue any kind of...
After they paid
and they were fined $650,000.
$650,000.
Yeah, so it was Malwarebytes, by the way. That was
Malwarebytes.
So
okay.
Who were correct there, but he was not anymore. Or no, it says he was at the time of the Microsoft hack.
Okay.
I'm guessing he's not now.
No. I'm going to assume it's hard to work from jail.
On the outside, yeah. I assume they'll put him, he'll get to work with computers in prison, so that'll be nice.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was interesting because with the whole situation, I kept reading the article and at first I got a little aggravated, like, well, why didn't they do something the first time? But then I continued to read, and it says that he is technically on the scale of autism, and he has a certain situation, which is face blindness, where I don't know too much about that.
Yeah, it's where like you can't identify people by their like you would look the same to me except like your voice and things
Yes,
like that.
I had to look that up, and evidently it is a real thing where you cannot recognize somebody's face that you've maybe seen yesterday or an hour ago. Maybe not even your own face.
That doesn't mean you're allowed to hack.
I don't think that gives you a right to hack.
But the reason they didn't put him in prison is because they felt like the punishment, him being in that kind of situation, would be more severe than what the crime would warrant, if that made sense. But I don't know. I'm not a judge, so.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense, I guess. But I mean, it's like, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I can't be convicted. I'm fat. So.
Right. Yeah.
I don't see a
think
I don't see a
that's the same
correlation.
thing.
I don't see a correlation at all. I'm
But
sorry.
okay.
Do the crime. Going to jail. All right, but back onto good white hat hacking news. I like this story. This is from Electrek with a K. .co. Hackers crack Tesla Model 3 in competition, and Tesla gives them the car. So it's nice. Like you're actually, if you're inviting people to come in and try
give them
to hack
permission.
your thing, yeah.
Right.
First of all, you need permission.
Yep.
Right.
We've talked
Because
to
it was a competition, right?
Yeah, we've talked to like HackerOne before and companies like that you can do those kinds of things. But they own this
bounties.
competition and they actually did get hacked, which sounds like a bad thing, but it's probably a good thing for Tesla because they were finding the vulnerabilities that they would have had otherwise. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. You're getting people to do your bug tracking, bug searching for you. At a price. Obviously, they're giving them a car. Now, my question is, that group that was able to do this, how did they divvy up the car?
Yeah, it's
Is
a
it
tough
everybody
thing.
gets it for a day?
Or do you just sell it and you
don't
take the money, right?
I don't know,
I want
unless
the
you really
car.
want to drive the car. Yeah, so it could be.
I think, or the employee of the month gets to drive the car.
If they're able to hack the car, technically they could all drive the car at the same time. Hey, Mike's got the car this week, but Cherokee is inputting
but I'm going to
where
force
it's
it
going
to
to go.
drive over to Cherokee's house. And,
I mean, that's a scary thing to hack. As we talk about self-driving vehicles and
Definitely.
moving towards that. I know that like at the B-Sides Vegas we went to last year, and even at RSA, they have these villages for auto hacking, and they're
voting
showing
machine
all
hacking,
that voting
and things
machine
like
stuff.
that.
Yeah, but this is going to be the big one, and I know we have an article a little bit later talking about GPS too, which is like equally scary. Actually, that's the next article.
I think it's next.
What a segue!
But
But
it
go
really
ahead.
was. But and I'm going to ruin your segue because I wanted to
dang
talk
it.
more about this. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was talking to somebody about this, and we were talking about these self-driving cars, and it's a scary thing to think, putting my trust and my faith, how would you feel driving down the road with a newspaper in front of you, trusting your car? I mean, do you?
Would you put a newspaper in front of you until you knew it was
I would
worked
not,
out?
yeah.
You're supposed to,
Yeah.
right? I mean, all of the rules say, even though this is a self-driving car, you're supposed to keep your hands on the wheel, you're supposed to pay
Which
attention.
I don't get and I've never driven in one of them, but like, if my hands are on the wheel, but it's driving, like it's still turning to go where it's going.
And I might be incorrect.
I'd
You
be
might not have to
passive.
hold the wheel. Maybe you just have to
I think you
be
do.
ready
or-
to grab it.
I've seen some too where it's detecting your eyes, and
Right.
if you're looking away or looking down, it'll beep. And
And it's kind of a double-edged sword because if you don't test it and, kind of perfect the technology, then you're still going to see a lot of accidents caused by humans. Whereas if you keep pushing forward with the technology, you could potentially reduce that number of fatalities in the long run. But yeah, it's just kind of strange.
And I'm afraid you're going to see things like I was reading an interesting article. I don't know why it's not part of our news here.
Sorry.
About stickers that people were using that were invisible to the human eye, but that these systems would pick up, and they could trick these cars into changing lanes, thinking the lane next to them was free, or that it was a lane and it's really a guardrail.
you put the sticker over the sensor.
I don't know. I didn't get to read. I don't know the details of it. They wouldn't release that part. But
Yeah, good.
No, these were stickers. I don't know if you put it on the back of your car, and if somebody comes up behind you, it forces them to change lanes. It's interesting.
Yeah,
Scary.
it's scary. I think the scary time too will be when it's a cross between self-driving and manually driven cars on the road. Because when it's, I'd feel more comfortable when it's all
if they were all
self-driven.
automated, yeah, because
Computers
I don't know.
following rules. Mike in the other lane.
Exactly.
From
It's
what I've heard,
probably
he doesn't let people in. And all kinds of things.
Listen, that was the other insurance company took 100% liability. It was not my fault.
Okay.
It's not my fault.
We're
There's
going with that.
defensive driving and there's offensive driving, and that is Mike. All right.
Okay, next article.
I don't want to get him started. All right, let's head over to Tom's guide from Tom's Hardware. GPS flaw. Security expert says he won't fly April 6th. So it sounds like there's like a Y2K-esque bug that's happening on that day. And first of all, if you're hearing this on April 6th and you're in an airplane,
Don't freak out.
Yeah, relax. They were wrong about the Mayan calendar. Y2K didn't really. I didn't see anything happen.
I spent in Yosemite National Park just in case, but nothing.
Sure. Happened. Yeah, I spent it under my bed, but it turns out it was fine. But so you'll probably be fine unless you're in a 737 Max, and
which has nothing to do with the GPS.
That's a different thing. But so can one of you two explain to me what is going on with this?
After you.
It seems as if originally when GPS was created, the input field was based off of a 10-base numbering system, and every 19.7 something, 77 years.
It was a 10-bit storage place for the counting of the date.
So I'll let Mike correct me here.
So I think, but I'm not positive. Where was that?
Well, Mike brought his computer, so he can look at these things.
I'll see if I can find that. But keep going with your story. Then.
Keep going with the wrong way, and he'll correct it.
Okay, great. So
There it is, yes. A 10-bit number field.
Okay.
In the GPS device software.
And basically, the counter, when it got to that particular duration, the end of that duration, the 19.77 years or whatever, which has already happened once before in August of 1999, but there wasn't an extreme fallout from that. At the time, people weren't as dependent on GPS, so there may be some disturbance now, but they don't know for sure.
Yeah, it says all these devices could suddenly think it's 19.7 years in the future, or maybe the past.
Or the past. I mean, that's the crazy thing is they don't even know which way.
Yeah, like if your Tesla all of a sudden thinks it's 20 years from now, does it just stop? I mean, it would be like, hey, I got there really slow.
Or maybe we could get an insight into the future. You never know.
Yeah. If you go 88 miles an hour.
With a gigawatt of
with the flux capacitor.
Yeah. But it was weird about where it could also report you as being at the zeroed out.
Nigeria? Is that what you said?
Off the coast of Nigeria. Yeah. So if you get a report on your GPS saying that's where you are or something like that, don't be alarmed.
Or if your wife's like, why did it say you're in Nigeria? No,
of course
honey,
you would think like
where
that.
Your text is coming from.
Or you can just be like, that's the day to do horrible things, and then say, it sounds like a GPS bug. There's news all about it.
I didn't rob that bank. I was in Nigeria at the time.
I was actually in Nigeria, 19.7 years in the future. And there's actually, Cherokee, you spotted in this article, there's a link to a PowerPoint article
that's cool.
over at gps.gov, which I didn't realize that GPS was a government entity.
The U.S. Naval Observatory is the one that issued this, and they're the ones that keep track of the UTC time and so forth. So
they put this out back in September of 2017 because much like Y2K, we could obviously know that this was going to come up, but no one thought about it the first day when they said, "Hey, let's use 10 bits." But it's actually a kind of interesting read because they talk about what led to all this and the different dates and times that things will happen. So GPS.
They definitely are urging people to update their firmware, and this doesn't affect not everyone. It's for satellite, so your cell phone system supposedly won't be affected.
Right, and you do see where it talks about newer receivers fully compliant with GPS ICD should handle this event okay. So in that case, those devices shouldn't know any different, or they're pre-programmed to handle this event. It's the older devices that we might have to worry about, and this is going to be some of those embedded systems, automation systems, things like that. But I've also read that a lot of this could be a very quick thing too, where it is going to temporarily give some false numbers, but then basically reset. And start the counter over, and then everything will be okay relatively quickly.
Yeah, so ring the flight attendant call button and ask if they can ask the pilot if it's a newer GPS system they have in the plane.
And look, they now have a 13-bit weak number.
So that will only be a problem in 5 years?
So now instead of 19.7,
I don't know how that works.
But,
make it 1,000.
That is going to solve the problem.
All right, let's shift gears now over to PC World. No joke, Google is killing off the Pixel 2 inbox. I don't know how to say this one. The goo.gl URL shortener and Google Plus this week. So it's a sad week. Do you guys use these services? Or devices?
The Pixel 2 is a phone, right?
Pixel 2 is a phone that I think
I do not have.
I think Don had it for like a week, like he had the Pixel and then went back to the iPhone.
Yeah, I think so.
But what are we on now? Are we on the Pixel 2?
I don't even know what the latest one is. Honestly, I'm an iPhone guy, so
all I know
I
is
don't
that
have
the camera
it,
is supposedly amazing, like in low light and stuff.
I think Wes might have one.
And then Inbox is obviously not just Gmail. It's something else. The URL shortener and Google Plus are ones that actually affected me in my job, because on the marketing side, if you have any links that you've hard coded in with the shortener for some reason, or if there are links that are pointing to your website, that all of a sudden those links could break, and that could affect your SEO. You're relying on.
So it's not only that you can't generate
links.
additional links; the existing links would break.
Yeah, I imagine they would if they're killing it. And then
I have seen a strange article before where certain even like tiny URLs. I don't know if it was actually that brand, but shortened URLs. I should be more. But anyways, they get kind of recycled. So at one point in time, like someone in your department in social media will put out something, especially sports teams were really like infamous in this kind of thing, where 10 years later, 5 years later, something like that, the URL would be reused for something a little bit more nefarious or explicit, and it was
tweet.
on a public page, and so maybe we'll see something.
Well, I wonder if they're just randomly generating those codes, whereas it will randomly generate the same thing every now and again. Google Plus, the other one, obviously not an issue for anyone using it, because unless you work at Google, and we're officially mandated to use it. But Google Plus did tie into a few things, like YouTube being one of them. A lot of your YouTube account for work and things might have been, kind of driven through that. So just make sure, if you do, manage a YouTube account, professionally or personally, to take a look at it and make sure that
Who
that
here
you've got all
signed
the
up
right
for
stuff.
one of those pages ever?
Google,
Did you?
I had a Google Plus page, but honestly, it was because I was doing SEO stuff at the time, and so it's like they pretty much said, you've got to be doing this. So, and we thought it would be a cool moment to look back at some of the other Google products and services that have failed in the past. And
A moment of silence.
Yeah, we came across killedbygoogle.com. And maybe we'll do a quick moment of silence while Mike scrolls down, except for the people that are listening to the audio-only version of this page would just hear dead air. So maybe I'll do the thing where I'll read, like, Inbox by Google.
Do we have taps?
No. We've got crying and other things. No, this is a somber moment, Mike, and I wish you wouldn't make light of it. But to clarify, Inbox by Gmail aimed to improve email through several key features. It was almost 4 years old. I like that it says the ages, except for everything in here sounds like a kid, and that sounds like very sad. But you've got the one that I looked for in here was Google Wave, because I remember how much they promoted that. It's just going to be this great collaboration tool, and then it was like
I'm seeing a lot of things that I've never heard of.
There's a lot, and that's one of the things Google definitely experiments, and it gets their hands in a lot of different things, which is neat. And then if it doesn't work out, they kill it or what have you. I was reading an interesting article though that was saying that this is the problem is that they're hurting their own. They're almost shooting themselves in the foot. Because as an organization, I don't want to invest in any of these Google technologies, base my company, use it as one of my mainstays in my organization, if it's not going to be here 2 years from now.
Didn't they just...
A lot of tech companies are like that, though. I think even our next article kind of segues into that.
It will.
Yeah.
Didn't they kill Picasso recently as well?
Let me go back.
Picasso?
Oh, sorry, I jumped pages here for you.
Not Picasso, that's a painter.
Just kidding.
Is it in there?
They did not kill Picasso.
They did not.
Google was in no way responsible for that. I don't think Google was around then. But and then you've got hardware. I didn't realize it actually killed Google Glass too. I thought it was just they had.
Oh, that was the cardboard.
They had gotten
the glass.
They had gotten a lot
Glass
of
was
negative
feedback
when it first launched. If you remember,
wow.
it was I think end user.
Well, they're ugly as
Picasso
sin,
was
but
killed. Yep.
Yeah, and the Google Mini. That's okay. That's. Killed over 6 years ago. It was a smaller version of the Google Search appliance. Oh, the appliance.
I saw one that said something like Google Vaccination Finder. What was that about?
Hold on. Can you search in here? Oh, let's see.
Do a little
it was down towards the bottom.
Did I spell that right?
Google Flu Vaccine Finder. Killed
There you
almost
go.
7 years ago.
What was that?
Finder was a
By the
map
flu,
smash-up
ironically.
that showed nearby vaccination places across the United States. It's over 2 years old.
Okay.
So I could find a place to get vaccinated if
So
I'm
you
bored
could-
on the weekend and nothing better to do.
And Google flew Trends as well. That was killed 3 years ago. It was a service attempting to make accurate predictions about flu activity.
But then everyone
right above that
stopped
is
getting
needle-based.
immunizations, and
Sure.
now,
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
of course.
We're not going to get into that.
No, we're not.
We're not opening that can of worms. But as Cherokee mentioned, it's not just Google that is on a murderous rampage. According to The Verge, Microsoft stopped selling ebooks and will actually refund customers for previous purchases. So
Disappointing.
could be partially why they had to stop selling them, but I didn't even know they sold ebooks.
I didn't really either. I mean, I've gotten some free books from them, like text type books, but I didn't know they were really
They
in
had
the
the
market.
Microsoft Press store that you could go to, and you could buy some of these books. And what I found was interesting was, and I understand them maybe not selling these anymore, but the fact that they're going to actively remove the books as well, even free ones, will
Just
be
give
removed.
me the book back.
Yes.
But here's your
So
money.
you'll lose access to them altogether.
How do you refund something if it was free?
Well, they won't refund the free.
Oh, they'll offer an additional $25 credit to your
But-
Microsoft account
Yes.
if
Oh.
you marked up the book or annotated it at all.
Because if
Oh.
you
You're
spend
losing your
hours
notes.
That's
making
true.
notes, and now all of a sudden your notes are gone.
Dang.
Your time is worth
Yeah.
$25 in
Well,
Xbox
that's good to
Live
know, yeah.
gold.
Right. We can get another life on
Credit,
one of our
apparently.
games.
Yeah,
Something.
well, that's a shame, but probably didn't affect many of you because that's why it's dying. So back to the Kindle. All right, let's head over now in Microsoft good news or rumor news, maybe. Over at Softpedia News, news.softpedia.com. Microsoft's Surface Phone dream returns thanks to new Microsoft patent. So for those of you that they had to pry the Microsoft phone out of your cold dead hands.
Can you go bigger?
It is, yeah. Can we? You can click the
see the
zoom
photo?
in on that guy.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we can see
Cool.
this patent.
Thank you.
So we've got the foldable phones now from a few places. Samsung, Huawei, I think, has one that sends all your information to the Chinese government. But this is a new one, a new patent from Microsoft that people are thinking means that they're still working on the phone. So is that something you
Or is
guys
it a
would
clever
welcome?
ploy just to make people think they're still working on a phone?
To distract them
Yes.
while they focus
Take over
on-
the world.
Yeah, world
I'll tell you,
domination.
I'll be honest with
Pinky
you.
in the brain.
I thought this was an April Fool's Day joke because this article came out on the 31st. I didn't happen to read it until the 1st. And, of course, the rumor was, Microsoft said, "Look, we're not doing the phone. We're getting out of it. We give up. We can't do it." And then this article pops up. I'm like, wait a second.
Just because you wait to read something on the 1st doesn't make it an April Fool's joke. That's not how it works.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, but the second picture there, if you want to bring...
The hinge?
Yeah, the hinge. You can actually kind of see it a little bit in more detail there. And I don't know. So I don't know if that's a screen the whole way around on the outside too, or I guess it's just the inside is the screen, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
This-
But it doesn't look seamless there necessarily, but
It does not,
maybe
does
there's more to it. So I have a hard time understanding that, like, these technical drawings sometimes of if we're looking up or down or
Well, I look forward to
Technical
seeing
drawing
more
blindness.
about that.
I'm sure Nate will be very happy too, because he had asked me at Ignite to, let him know last September if there was any kind of like rumors or anything about that getting started again. And I asked a few people, and they said if they are working on a new Windows phone, they're doing a pretty good job at keeping it under wraps. So
yeah. Nate is of course our in-house IT guy, and was he a Windows Phone lover?
fanatic.
He's definitely a
Oh,
window
really?
guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll tell you what. I mean, I used it when it first came out. Loved the interface.
Yeah.
Like, the App Store was obviously the Achilles heel that you just couldn't do the things you could do with an iPhone or with an Android phone. But if you could take all the apps that are in the iTunes Store and put them on a Windows Phone operating system, I loved that OS. It was really nice. But
It'll be
But
interesting.
crossed.
Yeah,
yeah,
fingers
another thing
crossed.
killed by Microsoft. I wonder if there's a killed by Microsoft website. We'll look into that. All right, a couple more stories here before we get to those interviews. Some bad news, a bad week for Facebook, it looks like.
I feel
First
like the
of
last
all-
time I was on the show, we talked
talked
about
about-
that too.
well, we
So
talked
a different
about-
situation with Facebook.
Oh, yeah, and I know a long time ago we talked about how to delete Facebook.
Yeah, that too.
was a while
We're
back.
always talking about Facebook.
But if you haven't done it yet, maybe now's the time. Because over on hackernews.com or thehackernews.com, Facebook caught asking some users passwords for their email accounts. So not asking them for their passwords
For the
to
platform.
Facebook,
Right.
Correct.
but asking them for the passwords to the email accounts that they used to sign up for Facebook.
Hey, verify for me that that's your Jeep out there, Peter. Give me your keys.
Yeah. Well, no, it's more like give me your bank routing number so I can verify that's your car. Like it has, they're unrelated things.
Well, the bank routing number is public. It'd be like, give me your PIN number on your debit card so I can hold your card.
We want to verify that's your email address. So give me the password to your email address so that I may log into it.
Yeah.
And then see that it was, No, it's not the best use. And you wonder how at a company this big, something like this passes through, because there's got to be checks before something just gets launched. You know, they've got to do a push or pull request.
And this is security 101. I mean, this is something that's been around for years and years and years. Do not, our company will never ask you for your password. Our company will never ask you for your PIN. I mean, it's something that I think everybody knows. If somebody asks you for your password, assume that it's a bad thing. And Facebook's in enough trouble already.
Right.
That they should be like security conscious about everything they do.
Great segue, Mike. Also on the hackernews.com, as it turns out, 540 million Facebook user records were found on unprotected Amazon servers.
S3 bucket. Second situation this week.
Yeah, it's not good times, and you can see that Mark doesn't look too excited about it. Never seen him smile.
I was going to say, he looks like he always looks, Peter.
He's wearing the same T-shirt, and he's disappointed. So that could be a shot from 7 years ago or just now. But, yes.
Are you guys still on Facebook?
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
I am.
Are you too?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I was just curious to see if this
He's going to shame us
you
now.
haven't changed your mind. It hasn't steered you away.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to give them my email password, but other than that, I'm not. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I don't have an intimate relationship with Facebook, so I don't have anything that.
Even if they did get your account or somebody.
You saw a picture of me. Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and
I don't know.
And how else, can I cyber stalk women before I go out with them? What am I going to do? Go on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn.
Yeah, I mean,
no, that's not going to
it's not
work.
going to do anything. No. Yeah. So Facebook it is for now, I guess, until the next big thing.
Although, if we want to skip one of our articles, that would be a great segue into what LinkedIn can be used for.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Oh.
But it turns out to cyberstalk them, I can just go over to AWS now and just
you get all the personal information.
Yeah, just give me your email password. How about that? And I'll be ready for this date.
I mean, if we do have to add it all up, like how many people have been leaked with the issue they had before with Cambridge?
That was like
how many
billions. This is millions.
So it could be the same people.
Is it
the
same people?
I don't know.
Every one of their customers at this point has had their information
at some point
out?
in time.
Well, a few weeks ago, we did an interview, and Don and I both went to haveibeenpwned.com, and I have not yet.
Really?
At least with the email addresses I use for those services, and Don had a couple of hits, I think. But I mean, when you're out there on so many sites, it's going to happen. But I've been lucky, so I got to go check now if I'm in this latest breach.
Me too.
We'll find out.
And I think this is probably, as we figure this out as a as a race, we swing wildly to one side in the whole social media and want to share everything. And these organizations, how they made money was taking that information, and being able to profile and being able to target ads and things like that and selling that to these other companies. And hopefully we'll figure out that that's not a good revenue. That's not the way to make money. It's not a good business model.
I have still not been pwned.
Nice. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Very exciting. All right.
That's an open invitation, Peter.
Yeah, I didn't give them my email addresses.
Saying, haha, you haven't got me yet.
Yeah.
Was it the guy with LifeLock that put his
the
number on the side of the
number.
truck and said,
yeah, smart.
Brilliant.
ArsTechnica.com. FTC gives ISPs green light to block applications as long as they disclose it. So as long as you tell us what we can't do anymore, that means it's fine. So net neutrality, you can add it to that killed by Google. Oh, I guess it wasn't killed by Google. It was killed by who was it, Mike? What's the guy's name?
I don't know if I want to bring this guy's name up.
You're going to have an open invitation too. Yeah,
I believe I say his name correctly, and I apologize if I'm not.
I don't think you apologize if you're not.
Doesn't have to be sincere, does it?
We realize that if we prod Mike a little bit, he'll go off.
It's every other day that you're reading something that they have done with this whole net neutrality and. When they start saying that we don't have to worry about setting up net neutrality rules because businesses will do the right thing.
Yeah.
Since when?
What?
In what universe?
Exactly. We're just talking about multiple articles about businesses not doing the right thing.
They will do whatever they can to make money until they're caught. I mean, that is the
I saw a
normal
meme
law.
where there was a picture of the river in Cleveland burning. Like, yeah, this is what happens when you let companies regulate
God.
themselves.
Regulate themselves. Yeah.
Sad.
Well, Boeing, you were talking about the
Boeing,
Max. You
yeah.
know, oh look, we have our own people to assure that our programs are
Yeah, or
tested
we
and-
want to get this out
Oh,
as quick
good.
as possible
Yeah.
to limit disruptions.
Crazy.
And
But this is just another step down the whole road of the FTC trying to take over, and Mr. Pai saying that they will do the right thing. And now, as you see, ISPs can now block apps as long as they say we're going to block this app.
Yeah.
So if they've got their
How
own
nice of
streaming
them.
app and they don't want you to use somebody else's streaming app, they can say, you know what, we're going to block that app.
yeah,
That's net neutrality.
So what, is everyone just going to be Tor users? Or
I think
is
we're
it gonna-
just that's true. We get
Yeah.
on the.
Yeah.
You can go back and watch our webinar on using the dark web.
And honestly, it wouldn't be so bad if my ISP came to me and said, you know, well, we're blocking this app, and I didn't like that. If I had another alternative to go
Yeah.
to, maybe I'd be okay with that, right? But that's one of the bigger problems is that there is no alternative.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
a lot of places are
monopolization.
monopoly.
Yep.
Locked in to these.
Yeah, because I am not using satellite internet. That just doesn't sound like it's going to
Yeah,
work.
where I've got a cap.
Especially with GPS. It
Especially
could
in
go down
Florida,
to
it
the-
rains like
And
every
it rains.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's raining. I can't use the internet. No, that's not going to work.
No.
That's why I use the internet, because it's raining.
Is
All
that
right.
why?
It sometimes, and when it's sunny, but there's a lot of different reasons to use the internet. All right, over at cyberscoop.com, what Cherokee teased a second ago, LinkedIn is becoming China's go-to platform for recruiting foreign spies. And I got to say,
Did I tease this?
well, you
yeah,
did. You said we're going to get to another way you can use LinkedIn in a little bit if it was our next story.
Yeah.
Oh.
That was me. But
That was you?
Okay.
Oh man,
I know, I sound a little like
you got I have face blindness. I can't.
Blindness, stop
Face
it.
blindness.
Sound
Perfect.
whatever it is. But I got to say that I'm disappointed that I haven't been approached.
Right.
Like, is there a setting I have to put like
Be serious.
like?
I mean, the money's probably pretty good.
I'm open
right?
to like you have to say like I'm looking for new opportunities to get people to like
Yeah, I think
come
so.
after you in terms of recruiting.
You
But
have
I
to
would
have
think
friends that are already
as a spy,
agents.
yeah,
Maybe.
that's
So-
disappointing.
You gotta look around and see who you're, hanging out with.
Yeah, or maybe this is what I'm saying because I'm already a spy and trying to.
Have a
Throw
good
you off
cover.
the-
But you need a better
That's right.
profile on
Never know.
LinkedIn. You need to make yourself more attractive to the
Yeah,
Chinese
be like
government.
So you
hang
gotta
out with a
have
bunch of people
certain
from
skills.
NORAD.
If all your friends are FBI agents or
I can endorse
stuff like
you
that.
for like
Lock picking.
window and building climbing. What is that even called?
I don't know. There's a name for that?
I don't know.
free climbing.
Parkour?
Parkour. There we go. Look, Peter is great at parkour.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that'll help you.
Okay.
Take pictures through those windows high up.
And if you do get the job via LinkedIn from the Chinese government, you can do such things as this. Over on The Verge, Chinese woman carrying malware arrested at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. And I was reading this article. She apparently was, her name was on the list to be able to be at Mar-a-Lago, and then she
She
tried
got
to go
pretty far.
somewhere where she shouldn't have, and had a
Amazing,
second
right?
screening. And
If she wasn't on the list, her last
name
was on the list.
it's probably the woman who owns the massage parlors down there.
Where do they find their security personnel that they put at the front gate? Oh, it's not you, but hey, Smith. There's a Smith on the
There's another
list.
Smith.
That'll
let you in.
Do you know
work.
them?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then you're in. It's only the president.
Right. It's just the president of the
But when they
United
searched
States.
this woman, she had
Multiple electronic devices.
what did she have? Where's all?
She
this
had like
stuff
4
on here?
cell phones.
Yeah, multiple cell phones. She had here we go. 4 cell phones, an external hard drive, a laptop, 2 Chinese passports, which you wonder, were they both like her photo or
Yeah, it
did you have
doesn't
someone
say.
else's?
Exactly.
And a thumb drive that was carrying malware. So she was ready to rock and roll. And I wonder, there obviously, if you get on the internal network at Mar-a-Lago, you're not in the White House system, but
The real question is, does she have a LinkedIn profile?
Oh, I don't know. I can find her name and I can search her. Let's see.
She's probably like a contortionist.
Yeah,
or
you talk amongst
something.
yourselves, and we'll see if I can find this.
Okay,
Yeah,
but yeah, that's pretty
it was,
scary.
It was pretty scary because she had several electronic devices with her, a thumb drive full of malware. and they just let her right in. Now, I don't know how far she got. And I don't remember how she actually got stopped.
Okay, because she tried to go to another place, and she mentioned she was there for an event that
really wasn't
on the
happening.
That's right. That wasn't even there. Yeah.
So
I think she went to the pool first.
This name is apparently like John Smith in the United States, because the first one I found was a student here in Gainesville. Well, I mean, it could be her, but
so Zhang is not a.
So it's just a very common name.
It's a very common name. So, which is probably why. If it was an alias, that's why it was chosen, because that's going to be on the list, I guess.
Somebody there is going to be.
But what they were saying, the reason that it's particularly worrisome, because Trump has several cell phones himself, and some of them don't have rigorous security measures on per his request, and therefore, if he's connecting to wireless networks, and they've already been able to secure monitoring on a particular network that can be assumed that he would connect to from frequent visits, then you'll be able to potentially have an insight into more personal communications.
I'll tell you what Trump could use: SyncDog.
SyncDog would be perfect.
Oh my gosh!
And that is a segue now that is going to work this time, because there's no other stories to talk about. So actually, let's shift gears and talk with Brian from SyncDog. He's the Chief Revenue Officer. We're going to find out all about that system and how it could potentially help the American president in this time of need. But let's go ahead and take a look at that, and we'll be right back with more on Technado.
My name is Dana Morrison. I'm the IT Director at Grace Christian School in Raleigh, North Carolina. IT directors often hoard so much knowledge that it's hard for their team members to learn. IT Pro TV has given us the ability to level up our technicians to a point where they can decide, this is important for me to learn. I would recommend IT Pro TV to any IT team. It's just a great tool for any IT professional.
All right, welcome back to Technado, and as promised, now we are joined by Brian Egenrieder, who I think I got his name right, is joining us all the way from the D.C. area. Brian, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
Good, and I did get it right?
You did. Very well done.
All right, that's a tough one. So you are with SyncDog, and you're the Chief Revenue Officer there, so I'm not sure if I want to ask you first to tell us about SyncDog or tell us about what a Chief Revenue Officer is, but so let's start with the company first. Tell us what SyncDog does.
Sure. SyncDog really focuses on trying to solve this whole problem around creating a realistic environment for mobile phone users, mobile device users. What we found is it's almost like the historic taxi industry. Is that it's built with the company in mind, not the end user in mind. And what we see all the time is we see people carrying multiple smartphones. We see people being threatened that if they leave a company, their entire device could be wiped if they're using a personal phone. So what we're trying to do is flip the script a little bit, where it normally starts with security and works its way to the end user experience or productivity. We're trying to flip that, take the user experience in mind first, and then work backwards to security. So we're basically creating an environment that completely separates personal use from corporate use on a single device, which enables people to either use a corporate phone and have some personal information on it, or more than likely their own personal phone and be able to access corporate data, but keep it separate and keep that corporate data extremely safe.
Sounds good, and definitely want to dig into that a little bit more. But first, if you can tell us a little bit about your role there and how you got into that.
Certainly. So I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here, which is a newer title, not made up, but it's becoming more and more common. But basically what it means is I run not only sales, but sales, marketing, and business development. So anything revenue, generating revenue, customer facing type of activity.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So what's your background then? Is it on that the more the business side or more the tech side? How'd you get to where you're at now?
Yeah, I would say definitely mostly on the business side. I've been in high-tech sales since I graduated from Penn State a very long time ago. No sense admitting to that. So I've always been on the sales side, but have done, I've been in the high-tech side of sales for a long time. So I'm more technical than I want to admit because it's sometimes dragging me down a rat hole that I can't always get out of. But I've always had a career in high-tech sales.
Yeah, so I'm really curious about this SyncDog product, because I was just on a trip with a friend who he works in the financial sector, and so he's got that phone that is just the work phone that he can only do certain things on, and he's got the other personal phone that he uses for everything else. And I was just watching him all weekend, seeing how annoying that was. So I saw in some of the videos and things about this product that you're doing things on Microsoft Word, on Excel. Are you in those other apps then, or do all those other apps exist within SyncDog? Walk me through how that works exactly.
Absolutely, and you hit on a great topic, and what I like to say is probably as recently as 3 or 4 years ago, when you joined a company, they would give you a new smartphone, a lot of times a new iPhone. You're like, wow, that's great, I'm getting a new iPhone. But the times have changed a little bit. You used to walk in, you would have an iPhone 5, and they give you an iPhone 7, and that's great. But what's happening now is companies are still giving iPhone 7s, and people's personal devices are 8s and 10s and all the latest technology. And especially with the millennials and the newer employees that are out there, like, why the heck are you asking me to carry two? My device is perfectly capable of doing everything I need. So you're absolutely right. Getting rid of that juggling of two phones, what's corporate, what's personal. I mean, God, look at the headlines with, things with Hillary and Jared Kushner and all that, everybody being like, oh, I thought I was on one device and I was on the other. And so the key for us is just, how do you solve that problem? Give somebody a single device that can be both, and it separates it completely from personal and corporate. But what we do is we have this workspace, or a framework as we call it, that has all the things you would normally expect, even in a desktop environment. So of course, email, calendar, and contacts, but then all the office editor type of capabilities. So, if you get an Excel document or you get a PowerPoint or a Word, the typical response was, hey, as soon as I'm back to the office, I'll get to that. We're trying to fix that as well, where you can open up those applications or those files and documents, edit them, do whatever you need to them, send it back out, all the while you're sitting at an airport on your mobile device, or even sitting on an airplane with Wi-Fi access.
Now, Brian, if I could ask you, I've heard a couple terms, the app wrapping versus app containers, and you guys have gone the container route, is that right? Where rather than individual applications you're protecting, you got a container that all of the apps go into?
Exactly right. I mean, I always say it started with the MDMs and things of that nature, where the philosophy, actually the MDMs were created to really inventory and manage the devices themselves, of how you rolled out to the employees. And then they put some password protection and wiping protection and things like that on there. And now, the MAMs, the application wrapping, is coming into play. But the drawback to those is it's really one application at a time. So as companies are now developing their second and third, and we have customers within the high 20s and one that has over 100 customized apps that they roll out throughout their employee base, that's untenable. People don't want these environments where you're looking as it has a little safe sign next to it. Is that a secure app or not a secure app? So what we do is we put everything into a single framework. So any application in that framework can share data across those applications. And that's the other big downside of a MAM or an application wrapping, is that application is secure, but as soon as you cut and paste, that's in clear text, and it's suddenly vulnerable. So, we're just the next step. I'm not trying to bury those others, but as companies are evolving, we're trying to evolve a little bit ahead of them.
Okay, now as far as the applications go, is there a specific set of apps that we can put in SyncDog in that container, or are we free to choose, like, do you have a word processing app that we have to use, or can I use Word?
Yes, there is that limitation. We just can't go out to the App Store and just grab any application that's already signed and throw it into our framework. So what we do is we do have applications that can access, a Word or Excel or any type of word processing doc or any type of file, really, and be able to bring it into the environment and work with those documents and wherever you publish it back out through, that secure connection back to your back office, can then interact with all those systems. But yes, we can't just go out and grab, Microsoft Word and put it into our framework and call it our own. But we go to great lengths to make sure that environment is seamless and still functional, and there's no hiccups in the exchange when you go from one application to the other. But any hybrid or native app that a company builds specifically for that environment, we can pull right into our framework. So as long as we're working with the developer, we can easily pull it in the framework. And when you do, it immediately adopts all the security that we bring to the table. So developers no longer have to worry about developing all the functionality you need and then saying, okay, how do we secure the apps and authentication and verification? That's all right out of the box. I mean, we can get somebody FIPS certified just within 20 minutes, basically. You just compile it into our app, and suddenly you have a fully FIP certified application. Wow. So a lot of benefits into rolling it into our environment.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so if we have something on our end, for example, and we want to put it in there, I don't have to necessarily have it go through the App Store and that whole process. I can just work with you guys directly and get that put in.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's basically you're just compiling it as a library, and then we pull into libraries. So you don't have to have a separate code branch or anything of the sort. So we try to make that as easy as possible for our customers as well. And we have people that only use us to be able to secure their own applications. They don't even use the applications we offer out of the box.
Interesting. So talk about that security side. I mean, obviously I've got to put in my Face ID or my thumbprint or my passcode to get into the phone itself. Is there another layer of security that the user goes through, multi-factor, anything like that? How does that work?
Well, we support it all, down to what the phone itself supports. Obviously, we can't have a phone that doesn't do facial recognition and suddenly offer that up. But the key is how we're encrypting the data, and it's kind of a proprietary encryption, and how we break apart the security key. But yeah, so as I like to say is, if you're checking in for a flight or you want to show somebody a picture of your pet or something like that, do you need multi-factor authentication? Do you need to change that password every month, every 3 months, or whatever your corporate environment tends to push on those people? So what I always say is, hey, if you want your password on your phone to be 1234, that's fine. Especially if it comes to, like I said, checking in for a flight or showing a picture of the grandparents or pets or whatever. But when it comes time to access sensitive data, that's where you leverage all the high-end side of the security. Make sure that data is encrypted at rest and in transit, and you're just really setting yourself up for, again, that highly secure environment, and then that environment that should be completely up to the end user of how secure they want to make it.
Yeah, I think you stole my question. That was mine. Was if I'm using a PIN to get into my phone, how do you secure the SyncDog area of my phone? So you answered that. Now, as far as deploying this out, I see you have a couple of different options. You got cloud, on-premises, and hybrid.
Mm-hmm. Right? Exactly right. Yeah.
Nice.
Depending on the end user's needs, on-premise. The argument's always out there: is it more secure, less secure? Well, it's rarely less secure unless people aren't keeping up with it. So cloud is so quickly keeping up that I would say a good percentage use our cloud environment. But we do have some people working with really, really high end secure or sensitive data that do demand an on-premise, and we support that as well. And then obviously some data can be in on-prem and doesn't have to be on the other.
Now, what would you say to people that tell you their device already has some kind of sandboxing capabilities built into it, or the fact that Office might do some sandboxing? What do you say to people like that?
Yeah, the key is the whole cross-platform capabilities of it, because Samsung, very good company. They have a similar solution, but it's Android only. It's Samsung Android only, and it's only a couple of the phones that they support. So, if your company is only using those phones, hey, that works pretty well. I do believe we have probably a tighter security, certainly when it comes to data in transit. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, probably both sides of it. But but again, I'm not trying to put anybody else down here. But the key is to be able to offer both an Android and an iOS and have it be more secure than any of the the apps that they might be used to. And that's probably the biggest hurdle that we face is, people are like, hey, I'm pretty sure I'm secure, so I'm good for now, until you can point out some of the vulnerabilities that, the CISO and some people on his team probably are aware of, but don't know of in all their alternatives, so they don't go out there bragging about it, certainly.
Yeah. So as a revenue guy, I'm curious how this would stack up against, I mean, the option is giving all the employees that need access to those things their own phone. You've got hardware costs. You've got the data plans. You've got maintenance on those kinds of things. Is this kind of comparable to that cost? Is it a cost savings, or obviously it has other benefits as well? So if it's more expensive, that makes sense as well.
Yeah, candidly, I think we underprice it. So I think the ROI on this is extremely simple. I'd like to make it a little bit more complex. So, we're driving more revenue, but we're a young company, and, that's the goal. The more people you sign on, the more you can kind of get a little more price competitive or get that price up there a little bit. But yeah, if you look at it, if you're trying to buy your employees some higher end phones, it's probably minimum $500 per phone. You look at the data plans and things like that. And And nowadays, most people aren't demanding, hey, if you're asking me to use my own phone, you got to pay for my plan. And even if you do, it's a small subsidy, but you're wiping out a very large cost. And for ours, we're a couple bucks a month per user, and it's per user, not even per device. So even if if somebody's using 2 devices, 5 devices, 10 devices, same price. So again, we want this to be a very simple decision. And then again, as we grow bigger and bigger, maybe start asking and demanding some more, but take advantage of us now while we're young.
Now, Brian, I saw a really cool feature when I was looking up with SyncDog. It was something about, and I forget the name you used. It was pretty clever. But if the device hadn't checked in a while, it would automatically wipe the secure portion.
Time bomb feature.
Yeah, the time bomb.
Yeah, and completely customizable based on what the administrative use is, or even what the role of the person is. If you have somebody in some of the 3-letter agencies or in kind of more dangerous or risky jobs, they don't check in every hour or every day. Again, it can be set up to whatever. Typically, it's a 30-day is what we see is somewhat the standard. And what's great is everybody's like, well, I don't want you wiping my data, but hence the sync in SyncDog, it's always syncing with your back end. So if you don't check it in, you lose the device, or somebody loses the device but doesn't want to admit to it because they're afraid of losing the pictures of the kids and stuff, which is what happens with the traditional technologies. You can put them to rest and like, hey, as soon as you find it or you get a new device, we send you new provisioning codes. It's basically a QR code you just scan, and then immediately syncs everything back up, and you're back up and running. So it's very simple to get resynced. So no one has a fear of telling the IT team that, hey, I lost my phone, and either lock the container or wipe the container and protect all that data.
So have you found success with certain industries? I know you've kind of mentioned government. We've talked a little bit about financial. Does this skew towards? I mean, you can see the industries that are more security conscious, but if you guys had luck with those, or tailored it to kind of go into certain niches like that.
Yeah, if anything, it's probably the hardest part of my job, because of course, regulated industry, people that are working with PII and other sensitive data, HIPAA data, things like that, obviously very good targets for us. But as I always say, my target audience is anybody that, a lot of people in the company are carrying 2 phones, or again, signing a document when they say they want to use their own phone, that the company has a right to wipe their device. And what makes my job hard, we have 10-person companies who are customers that, have those problems that we're solving for them. And we've got 100,000 person companies and just about in every industry. So it's a great problem to have, but, we can pretty much almost sell to any company, any vertical, any size, which makes targeting and focus from a revenue generation and a sales perspective a little difficult. But, it's again, a good problem to have.
So you mentioned you guys are a relatively new company. So what stage are you guys in right now? Is it kind of, the product's out there and we're in growth mode trying to, just get as many new customers as we can, or are we still adding features to the product, or are there things coming down the road?
Well, a little bit of both. Yeah. I mean, we're always trying to innovate. We're at a point where the product is very stable and we're out there with it. But as we talk to more and more companies that say, hey, are you able to put this in or do that? We're always thinking about if it's good for one, and we'll poll some of our other key customers or people that have been with longest, and if they want that same feature, we'll put it together and roll it out for them too. So we're always innovating, but no, absolutely, we're in growth mode. And right now, most of our business is through channels. We've got a lot of people that embed our technology, put their own branding on it, and call it their own, which is a really easy and good market for us to be in. And we're trying to go out to get more and more direct customers, because it it obviously expands your channel as well. It's kind of a duplicitous type of or a double benefit type of a scenario, as you get direct customers and their channel partners that they already work with find out about you as well.
So if people who have been listening here are intrigued and want to find out more, maybe check out the product, what's the best way to reach out to you guys?
Call me is one.
Personal cell phone number we'll put on the bottom.
Personal cell phone. I'll hold up my business card here. No, just syncdog.com, www.syncdog.com. But look up SyncDog on Twitter, LinkedIn. We're all over the place. I can't tell exactly how my background is, but we're pretty good at branding. We've got a fun logo, so just look for that logo. Just type in SyncDog anywhere, and it should bring you to us pretty quickly. Request a trial. we invite people all the time, just go out there and play with it for a while. You can get it set up in minutes and figure it out. You'll know in a couple minutes if it works for you or a couple hours, but we'll let you run with it a couple days, a week, whatever makes sense. So give us a try.
Now, I heard you did say personal cell phone. Does that mean that you have a second cell phone you use for work? Because this would be like a whole gotcha interview thing then where we caught you.
No, I've had that same cell phone for 20 years. So call me on that. That's if you know my number, call me. Hey, if you don't, call me. I don't care.
He uses his own product. He drinks the Kool-Aid. No,
that's my own Kool-Aid. Yeah, extensively.
Well, thank you so much, Brian, for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for watching. But don't go anywhere. We've got more Technado coming up right after this.
I'm James Packer. I'm the General Manager of Kirk ISS based in the Cayman Islands. I used IT Pro TV extensively in my last place. It grew very well, helped upskill the team. I had 110 engineers in the field and we had dozens of IT Pro accounts with the guys training, and last year alone they passed over 40 certs by using the online training. I think I can safely say without IT Pro TV I wouldn't be where I was today, because I only got this job on the back of the qualifications I have.
All right, thank you so much to Brian for joining us, and yeah, Mike, that was pretty cool. I've never used something like that. I've never worked in that kind of industry where I've had to do that. But have you ever done the two cell phone
I have
thing?
not, but this is something that I think a lot of organizations are going to have to deal with. It's just becoming more and more commonplace to BYOD, as we were talking about, and as Brian mentioned. I've got my iPhone 10. The company's trying to hand me an iPhone 7 for my work phone.
Yeah, no thanks.
No, thank you. I'll go somewhere else, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple burners, for personal reasons, but
That's separate.
No.
yeah, that's a whole different thing. But none of them have GPS turned on, so we should be good. We do have a second interview as well, and actually, it's happened a little bit in the past. That's why you'll see all of a sudden Don's there and Adam's here.
And I'm not.
And you're not. Similar hair, but less bracelets. But this is with Aviv Grafi, who's the CEO and founder at Votiro. And it's one of the many Israeli security firms because they're, the Israeli section at RSA, they have like a whole section for different countries. Like South Korea had a big section, Germany, but Israel, it's a huge section because there's so much coming out of the military and the government side there. And Aviv was actually in the Israeli Army's elite 8200 intelligence unit. So probably got some cool stories to tell. So let's go ahead and let Don and Adam take it away for that interview coming up right after this.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Technado. I'm your host, Don Pizzette, and like we promised in the first segment, we are back with an interview with Aviv Grafi, CEO and founder of Votiro. Aviv is meeting with us all the way from Tel Aviv, quite a distance. So, Aviv, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much for hosting me today.
And, your product is one of a number that have kind of popped up on the radar this year in the ever-increasing security space. And it's easy to kind of get lost in this. So let's kind of start out really simple here. And can you tell our viewers a little bit about Votiro and what the product is?
Sure. So Votiro, we're a cybersecurity company. We're based in Israel. And the problem that we help our customers to solve is the challenge of weaponized documents. Those documents like Excel spreadsheet, Word document that actually hitting our clients and the end user every day with those malicious content and macros. And we actually understand that there is a balance between that security and productivity, and we think we have a unique approach to that.
And, it's funny because for years, the advice that even myself, I would give this advice to people is I would say, don't open attachments from people you don't know. It's very easy. You get an email with an attachment, you don't know who they are, you just don't open it. But one day somebody told me, well, Don, I work in human resources. I get resumes from people that I don't know all the time, and it's kind of my job to open those up. So there are certain careers, certain people that they have no choice. They have to open up these documents that they don't know where they're coming from. And I know that that really seemed to be a big problem, especially in the late 90s and even the early 2000s, where you had a number like the Kornikova virus and pretty popular ones that hit the news. But it seems like that's died down a lot. Is that still a real active thing? Do you see a lot of malicious traffic out there in attachments?
Actually, we saw a rise in the malicious attacks and used by attachments. In fact, the hackers are much more sophisticated now and actually the use case that you described about the resumes, it's very easy for hackers now to fake such resumes. In fact, before I started Votiro, I was doing penetration testing for quite some time. So I was traveling around the world and interviewing IT staff. Interviewing or auditing the IT system, and after 3 or 4 days, I was presenting a report or a demo. How can I hack their system? And actually, after a few times, I found a way that works for me 100% of the time. I went online to their open jobs positions and just picked one and crafted the resume, a fake resume that looked exactly like a real resume, but it's weaponized, and sent out to the recruitment department. And as you said, their job is to open documents. And actually, when they open that document, a message pop up and say, actually, you could have been hacked. And this worked 100% of the time. And I think this is one of the risks for those departments who, on one hand, in order to be successful, they need to open documents. On the other hand, we're telling them, think twice before you open a document. And we're launching those awareness campaigns, which are great.
So, Aviv, this is really interesting. And I'm thinking as you're talking about it, not only about my background, which is similar to yours, but also where the technologies intersect. And what I mean is, maybe you could speak to this a little bit for our members. Your solution sounds a lot, although I know it is distinctly different, like elements of DLP, data loss prevention, and technology that does that, but also clearly the ability to be able to do either dynamic or static testing, right, in real time in line, depending on the methodology and the approach. So how do we link those two technologies is obviously clearly we use your solution, but I know your solution is made up of a lot of different components, right? Don and I were talking before we got started with the interview about the fact you have an option that scans USB-based solutions. You have one that scans inline. So how do you link all these different threat vectors, and what's the best approach based on the incoming solution that you're trying to find?
Yeah, so I think maybe a bit of explanation of what are the current solutions or the current approaches. So most of the approaches in the market today, like anti-malware and sandbox, they are trying to learn from the past and predict the future. Like antivirus based on signatures, right? They need to have one malware sample in order to protect the next one. But we know that hackers are generating thousands. Actually, you can generate different hash of the same document and let that sandbox spawn that in a new virtual machine running for minutes before it can actually give a verdict whether that's malicious or not. So all those solutions, actually, they trying to learn from the past and predict the future. We thought that we can solve that differently. We all know the blacklist versus whitelist approach. So those solutions work in a blacklist, like a firewall. We know that we want to work as a whitelist. So let's take, for example, a PDF. That resume I mentioned, instead of looking whether we have something bad or bad part in that PDF, we know what are the good parts. We take from a PDF, for example, the content, the pages and bookmarks and layout, and generate a safe copy. We take that safe copy that is fully functional, delivering it in less than a second. Now, this technology, which provides that peace of mind, we implemented that on a variety of sources. So going back to your question, we do have an integration with your endpoint. We do have an integration with the email. So every document goes either from email or from endpoint or download from the web. We can apply this technology in that product on top of your existing security solution.
You know, you mentioned weaponized documents. Let's talk about that for just a second, because when I think weaponized documents, I guess I'm not a hacker. I'm not a person who writes viruses, and so I think about the past and like Word documents with macros. So there are a lot of malicious macros in Excel and Word documents, and those are pretty easy to detect. If you're opening a resume, you kind of expect there not to be a macro on there. But what are some of the other mechanisms that people are using? Like what types of documents can be weaponized? Is it just PDFs, or are there all sorts of different things? What are you seeing out there in the wild?
So we see a lot of Office documents. You mentioned one very popular technique like macro-enabled documents. You'll be surprised, but a lot of those very, I would say, easy technique of adding to that resume a blurred image of that resume, saying if you want to read that resume, just need to press the enable content button just above. It actually triggers that malicious macro. Those users, and they need to do their job, so they click on it. So one approach, of course, that eliminate that macros, but for financial departments, you cannot really drop their macros. So that's why we thought that we should solve that differently. And by reconstructing a safe version of that file, we think that is a solution that we can actually cope with that. This is one type of an attack. Another type, which is not macro, WannaCry 2 years ago, it was based on a vulnerability in Word, in OLE component. This is an embedding of other documents or other, I would say, files in Word document. It was extremely, I would say, efficient, because it didn't require any interaction from the user. So that's another way of weaponizing document. A third way, for example, is to embed a link to a malicious website. So this is another way to embed actually something in a document. And for those departments, we have our end users, which their work is to open documents. They need to balance this out. They need to actually to do their work. So it's pretty easy to learn them.
You know, one thing that I think is mentioned on your website is that you guys are looking to basically create security, but without compromising productivity. You know, you want people to be able to do their job, but you don't want to slow them down too much. And I've seen places where, the person I spoke to that was an HR person, and I said, well, all right, what is your solution? How do you work around it? And what they would do is every time they got a resume, they would go and upload it to VirusTotal, wait for VirusTotal to give an answer back, and if it was clean, they would then go and open it. And so it was a delay to them. Every time they wanted to open a document, they would have to do that. If they got a USB key with a file on it, they'd do the same process, upload it and process it. So how are you guys able to overcome that where it's not like a burden on the user?
So actually uploading to VirusTotal or sending that to a sandbox, that's a viable solution. But the problem is that we saw a lot of cases where either VirusTotal or the sandbox was, I would say, the malware was sandbox aware, or actually it can be evaded. This is one. Or it was new, so in terms of the hash was different than what VirusTotal was familiar with. So it took them some time to scan that. So actually what we're doing, instead of trying to upload that and spawn that in a brand new virtual machine, we are reconstructing, we're dissecting the documents and generating a document which is similar or identical in terms of the user experience, but all the bits, all the structure of the document underlying the actual content is different. So the user won't notice that we were there, but he will get the exact same user experience, exact same formatting, charts, macros, embedded objects, everything looks and feels exactly the same without the need to send out to a third party, to a long process. And actually, as you said, we're actually moving the responsibility to the user. And actually, we know that users sometimes they want to do the job. You cannot really enforce that. So by delivering a safe content, we believe that it will be much more efficient than sending that to a third party for inspection.
And it's really interesting. The approach, I think, it speaks to the evolving threat vectors, right, that we face in the wild today. So I'm interested more, at least in this question, right, about the idea of platform, right? We've talked a lot about the approach, and it seems like it scales, certainly. It seems like it enables productivity, which is great. And I'm sure it does that across more than one platform. But is it scalable to a handheld device, a mobile device, for instance? Is it scalable to, I'm sure, a laptop and a desktop? But how do I, as an end user, see this if I want to implement it to my enterprise with 10,000 people globally? What does that path look like? And what am I going to have to do? What are the hurdles and how long does it take?
Okay, so let's talk architecture-wise. Mm-hmm. So we are providing a centralized processing cluster or server which can process document. Now, to that cluster, we're actually connecting connectors. So one connector can be connected on your email server. So it can be either Exchange or Office 365 on the cloud, and that connects to the same cluster, delivering the attachment or the file being downloaded to that cluster, sanitizing it in less than a second, and then delivering it back to the same origin. So if that's an email, all the attachment will go through Votiro, go back to your email server, and deliver to the user immediately. This is one connector. The connector can be a web download. So if you have a proxy in your organization, you mentioned 10,000, so 10,000 users, so mostly you probably have some proxy like F5 or Blue Coat, Symantec, stuff like that, so you can actually connect that. Same goes to the endpoint. So actually you can connect all those connectors to the same centralized cluster. That cluster actually have a management console. So you can see that the entire inbound attachments and threats on one unified console, no matter where they come from. And we're not stopping just on the traditional IT. We also connect to the box deployment, Dropbox deployment, SharePoint, all the cloud-based solutions. That also deals with attachments. We're soon going to launch the Salesforce plugin. So every PDF being uploaded by a sales rep overseas, it will be opened by the accounting department here in the headquarters, right? So someone needs to open that. So that works across all the channels that you can get documents from. And in terms of scale, because this is a static process, takes less than a second, it can scale pretty well. So our biggest deployment, I think, is more than 200,000 users in Japan. So that's actually something that we're very proud of, so we can scale pretty well.
All right, well, if you're just tuning into Technado, we are interviewing Aviv Grafi, CEO and founder of Votiro, and he was just describing the centralized cluster that powers the security solution. And I had a question on this that ties back to GDPR, and this is an issue that a lot of people are worried about, that if they have documents that are, maybe it's patient medical records or resumes for that matter, somebody discloses their personal information to you to apply for a job, sharing that with another company can be a challenge. And so with that document, when it goes to the centralized cluster to be scanned, is that done entirely on-premise, or is that being sent back to centralized servers with Votiro? How does that work?
So that's a great question. Actually, the privacy of our customers is very important to us. This is not a cliche. Most of our customers are regulated environments, regulated customers from the financial government, and most of our deployments for those customers are actually on-prem. This can be on-prem, entirely on-prem. You don't need to connect that to send anything back home to us. So for the organization, I can give you an example. For example, insurance companies. We have insurance companies that requires their clients to upload documents. Think of if you want to open a new claim with your insurance company, you need to upload a medical report. Maybe if you need to open a new account, so you need to upload credit statement, maybe history of PDFs, documents, stuff like that. So in that case, all the documents stays on the premise of the customer of that insurance company and never goes out of it.
So Aviv, just another question, more about architecture in the back end. So I'm assuming, based on what you're describing, since it is traditionally, as you said, deployed on-prem, can it be supported in a virtualized environment? Is it an appliance? Is it a virtual appliance? Is it only hardware? I just want to get a sense of what we would look at from an architecture perspective if we have to stand this up.
Great question. So actually, the Votiro Disarmor, the whole suite is virtual, it's software. It can be deployed, it's mostly deployed on virtual machines. So you can deploy either on your favorite hypervisor, either on-prem or on cloud. So we support Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud, but also VMware, Citrix, or the local on-prem virtualized environment. So it can support your existing hybrid, your vMotion, so it can be easily highly available, and you can deploy that in minutes. In fact, I would say the simple deployment of one management console, one instance on the cluster, and one connector, let's say, protecting your incoming email or your uploads, it actually can be deployed in half a day. And once it's working, set out of the box, you can just play with the policy, and that's it. It's working in hours.
We just learned a little bit about the centralized server, so it runs on a virtualized platform. Are those appliances managed by you guys, or would we be responsible for the upkeep, operating system updates and so on?
So most of the deployments we provide that as a software, as an application on top of either Windows or Linux machines. So most of the customers, they want to control, because those Windows or Linux machines, they're managing it. They want to control the updates, the patch management, stuff like that. And it can be simply as part of your regular patch management cycles.
Excellent. So, it sounds like a pretty robust product. A lot of times we see software like this that creates obstacles. It creates a barrier. You have to train your end users to use it. Sounds like this is pretty seamless. So it's a neat solution. Sounds like you got a lot kind of going for you already, but what does 2019 look like for you? What are your kind of upcoming features or things that you're trying to achieve this year?
Actually, one of the interesting things that we recently launched is the how to cope with password-protected documents and archives. In fact, we found that it's a big challenge for a lot of organizations that cannot do anything with password-protected files. They cannot scan it. So this is one of the nice features we recently announced. And I think for this year, we actually working with, we just announced a partnership with Ingram Micro and new resellers. So we want to help this product to actually become more common and more popular and help you actually to drive it. We're very happy to hear your comments and, of course, your feedbacks. We admire our users, and we think that's where we actually can scale and learn from. So I think every comment and feedback would be very appreciated.
Awesome. Well, for our viewers, if they want to learn more about Votiro, where's the best place for them to go?
So they can go online to Votiro website, www.votiro.com. And of course, they can follow up our Twitter account at Votiro, and of course on LinkedIn as well.
Excellent. Before we wind down, Adam, did you have any other questions?
No, I think we hit on all the highlights. GDPR compliant, it sounds like, certainly scalable. It sounds like multi-platform support as I bump into my microphone, and cloud-based as well as on-prem. So, I mean, all the major checkboxes.
Yep, all our buzz. Well, we didn't talk about machine learning or artificial intelligence.
We did not.
Missed those, so we'll work that in somehow.
Okay.
All right. Well, Aviv, I really want to extend a big thank you for taking the time. I know with the time zone offsets and all, it's always hard for us to do interviews with people on the other side of the planet, but it's a lot of fun. So thank you for spending the time with us.
Thank you very much, guys, for hosting me today. It was really fun, and I look forward.
All right, and a big thank you also to our viewers. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the interview as much as we did doing it, but don't go anywhere because we'll be back with more Technado after this.
Enjoying Technado? Then be sure to check out Ignite, another podcast from the Pro TV network. Ignite highlights stories of leadership as host Vicky Guy interviews a new business person each week. Learn more at itpro.tv/podcasts.
All right, welcome back, and another great interview there, and another great episode today. Packed a lot into that one. Mm-hmm. And before I let you guys go, you guys can go whenever you'd like. I do want to let you know about a couple things coming up from IT Pro TV. First, we have some great webinars coming up. Actually, with the two people sitting next to me, Mike and Cherokee, on
No way.
Thursday, April 11th. Yeah, you're here to plug your webinar. It's just like late night TV. You guys will be talking about Microsoft certification test prep, tips for passing the new exams. We'll talk a lot about the role-based changes and what's up with that, and how you can prepare for Microsoft exams, because you guys have taken a few. Microsoft
Just a
exams.
few.
Yeah, just a couple.
And there's some big changes lately.
Really?
Yeah.
Even to the exams, like the way the
Definitely.
exams work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we're not going to give that away now. Head over to itpro.tv/webinars. You can sign up for that one April 11th. And even if you can't go at that time, go ahead and register for it still, and we'll send you the video. Yeah, the recording after the fact. And you'll be able to watch it at your leisure. Also, another one coming up, Joe Peacock has 10 tips for leading effective IT teams. That's going to be on April 25th. And then there's another cool one that's coming up in May that we haven't put up on the site here yet, but it's we're actually going to have Don and Daniel together, and Daniel is going to try to hack in to Don's system live, and we're going to be able to see, the things that Don employs to stop it, and
like
red
that.
team, blue
Red
team.
yeah,
blue
we're going to
team,
have a little live red team, blue team. So
Are they going to wear
Nice.
costumes?
I hope they're going to wear costumes. Yeah, and do voices. It's going to be like Spy versus Spy.
Yes.
From the old Mad
The old
magazines.
black and white, yeah.
I like the idea.
That's what we'll go with. We have time, so we can put that together. But head over to itpro.tv/webinars, and you can find the old webinars for the archives and sign up for the new ones as well. Also, while you're in your browser, if you can head over to go.itpro.tv/Technado, we've got a special offer for you if you're interested in beefing up your IT training. Maybe you're preparing for some of those Microsoft exams. It's a great way to do it. We have a 30% off code that you can use, as well as a 7-day free trial. And when you use that code, it lasts for the lifetime of your account, as long as you keep it. And we've got information about team pricing as well. If you have a business and want to get your whole team leveled up, that's definitely a way to do it. Head over to go.itpro.tv/Technado. Well, thank you, both of you, for joining today.
Been fun.
Yeah,
as always.
Good stuff.
If Don's on a field trip again, we'll get you back here for sure. But thank you all for joining us as well, and I hope your flight landed safely if you were listening and the GPS all worked out. And we will see you next time right here on Technado.